Hello. Welcome to another day. We are back at it once again. Just did some preliminary cleaning up. You know, when you work with fiberglass and a disc grinder, it goes everywhere. I so regretted this. I mean, I really did. That's the only thing that aggravated me about the whole thing is the boat wasn't exceptionally clean to begin with because it's been sitting out here for months, but you know, you throw in the fact that you disc ground up 5 or 6 of those dust pans full of dust, and that's just what I swept up. I mean, there's still stuff piled up everywhere. Yeah, and the worst yet, it gets on like the rubber hoses and stuff like that. So that's the worst thing for me because, you know, all the lines, all those things, everything looks brand new. So we're gonna have to work around that to fix it, whatever we need to do. You also need to get some things off the deck, like there's a big blot of blood. It wouldn't be a project if I wasn't bleeding, that's for sure. But we've got one more round of this dirty stuff to do, which is not going to be nearly as bad as it was before because all we're doing is kind of cleaning up the mess. You know, it does get a little drippy around here or there. I mean, I use a big Coke shell for a 12-pack, and I coat all my stuff on the floor before I put it on the piece itself, and sometimes it's a little drippy here and there. Lucky enough, all this right here wasn't turned into a giant swamp of leftover fiberglass and fibers. So that's the goal at the moment. I'm just kind of working my way up to it because I'm clean at the moment, and as soon as I do that, I will no longer be. But they seem to have come out well. I mean, all we were doing really is adding an inch of wood on each end here, and that was accomplished. I mean, pretty much the whole box except for the top stayed intact anyway. So you add the fiberglass that we just put on it and the existing fiberglass, now they're like double strength. I don't really think there was an issue before either, because getting the tops off, I mean, I skill sawed like half of it, and I also ripped down both sides of the fiberglass and across the back with my disc grinder over here. I just cut it. Best thing to cut fiberglass with is a metal disc on a disc grinder, just as an FYI. And it took a 2-pound maul and a big chisel to get that to break off. So and it was like pounding on the hull too. I was regretting every second of it. It was like, oh, no gel coat cracks, no this, no that. So we're going to start off today with some more boring activity, but it's got to be done. Without it being done, the motor can't be put in. Can't put the motor in. Can't finish the wiring. Can't finish the wiring. Can't finish the upholstery. Can't finish the upholstery. See, and there's another thing too. That's the reason why I haven't put the upholstery in, even though it's still sitting downstairs ready to go, and it would probably take an afternoon. I just had no desire to do that because I knew in the back of my mind somewhere that there was a possibility of something like this coming up. And if I had dust over all the upholstery right now before anyone ever sat in it, I'd be a little upset. So I'm going to get my grinder out, and I'm going to go ahead and have some dirty fun.
Hey you, what you trying to do? You made the man, but that don't make you God. All those acts of unselfishness are just a game to make you look so good, and you.
Everything looks better with a coat of paint. the end of an era. It's nice to see these big pails of resin go away. And I really didn't have room to hold this big bucket here for about 1.5 quarts of resin, so I'm putting them into little quart jugs. But it's the last of them. And that one also goes. That was our Cabasil. Used a lot of that, but no reason to have a bucket that contains less than 1 quart of Cabasil, so we stuffed that in one too, like down there. And now we've went ahead and mixed up some of what we call our 411 Bilge Coat. 4 parts of Rust-Oleum White, 1 part Rust-Oleum Allmand, and the Krylon acrylic hardener. And it's setting up right here. We already got 1 coat on. We'll see how 2 coats look. Figure a 3rd coat will probably have to go on the little motor mount boxes. I don't even know what to call them, honestly. Stands. Because they're not motor mounts. The motor mounts are actually attached to the motor. And then they have paws. Then they sit on hull. I don't know. Bump. Hull bump. But either way, it's a coat of paint makes everything look better. But we're just gonna, it's a little humid out right now, so we're giving it a little bit of time to kick off, because we did do a little bit of it heavy, and I'm sure most of it's probably ready for another coat, but we still got about 10 or 15 to wait for our paint to go off. And once that's full with and we get to almost a satisfactory level, then we'll have to go cut this thing.
Today, and what games did you decide to play? Better feed and watch the monkeys get your fix. You must be bored, I know that you play the fool, you play the fool.
Now you see why I do that stuff over here in the yard. Well, aluminum's inert, so maybe in 100 or 1,000 years from now, somebody will discover a huge aluminum deposit over here. Doesn't seem to hurt my grass any, that's for sure. Motor mounts plates are cut. Got our 2nd coat on our bilge. Letting it tack up and do its thing before I do what's left in the container. No reason to waste it. And I figured the mounts themselves would probably use another little coat. The bilge was fine. As I said, it just looked worse than it really was. But just use it up and get rid of it, because hopefully it'll be a while before I have to use that color again. And that batch over there will be pretty bad by then. So, but cut all my pieces. All 2 of them. Went ahead with a disc sander and sanded all the edges. I don't like any sharp edges in a boat. Even that little point right there. You reach underneath it there and it hits you in your forearm, it'll rip you open in a heartbeat. 10 seconds with a disc grinder or disc sander and that corner's all gone. I can rub it all day long. You may get a scratch or something, but you're not going to end up needing stitches, that's for sure. And I try to do that on everything, including the motor itself. Every casting, little slag, whatever, has been all deburred and gone. We just don't play that, because I've reached around motors, cut myself on a block before, ripped my hand open. I've cut myself on hose clamps. That's why I always use these ends on the hose clamp. I mean, these are clamp aids, but of course there's 4 or 5 different manufacturers at this point. And now we're just waiting for paint to dry. You can watch it with me, but I'll try to spare you that.
For tonight, afternoon thunderstorms and showers expected for tomorrow with a high of 87. Morning showers for Thursday up to 80.
You think you're cool, but you're not cool. You're just a fool. You're just a fool. Such a fool.
Okay. So, we had some downtime while we were waiting for our third coat of paint to dry. Looks pretty darn good in there now. Like nothing ever happened, which that's a good way to be, considering what it looked like yesterday. So we went ahead and we got out our Dremel and some drill bits, and we widened these guys out, and we did that because they are getting these larger lag bolts, and they barely go through now. Before they wouldn't go through at all. Then we thought, you know, well, we already got a mess going here, might as well drill these guys out. That's where it goes through the sides at, so I won't be drilling the tops out until I find out exactly where the motor sits. And that means exactly, like shake it around, make sure it's all pushed into where it's supposed to be in the transom shield. That kind of dictates exactly how the motor is going to sit anyway, is the transom shield. It's a weird thing with Volvo. Makes them real easy, no alignment issues, none of that crap. But the motor lines right up with the transom shield, so if your transom shield's kind of crooked one way or the other, your motor's going to be crooked too. But with that, we have almost dry paint. I'm going to say it's dry enough to probably do another coat, but I wouldn't want to work on it right now, so that's out. I got one more coat of paint to put on these motor mounts, and they're done. They're done. Pretty much means that I'm going to put the boat away and I'm going to be done. So we'll see you tomorrow. Hey, you know, here. You want that? You want that? Take it. Here. Just won't go that last inch, huh? And welcome to another day. It's going to be an ugly one here eventually, we're sure. We've already looked at the radar this morning. I mean, they're calling for storms, as we showed in the video yesterday. They were calling for storms yesterday too. Today, which will happen eventually, right off to the west of us. As I say this, I can hear thunder in the background, but it's a cell that's off to the west of us, and hopefully we've got an hour or two. And what I'm going to attempt today is what I've wanted to do for the last 4 days, and that is install these guys. And it's amazing on what you got to bring out here just to do that. I mean, between the drills and the ratchets and the, you know, everything, even to the vacuum cleaner, it all adds up. Trip after trip, that's for sure. Like I always say on one of these projects, something every day. Always something every day to keep you in the project. That way you get it finished. I mean, I look at it as like a piecework job. You know, if I was going to go remodel a house, I wouldn't spend 9 years remodeling the house before I got it back up on the market. And if you're going to do that, you probably shouldn't buy the house in the first place. And it kind of goes the same with these boats. If you really think you're going to spend 9-10 years rebuilding a boat, you may just want to go buy one that's already intact, because things will tend to get away from you. I mean, I could have painted this thing, and if it takes me another 5 years to finish it, the paint shop's going to be 5 years old before I ever sees the water, you know? So, I mean, it's all relative. But if you stay with it, I mean, this one was extreme. I mean, this is an extreme version. I mean, I've redone, as we all know, a whole crap load of boats, and this one was extreme. Most of them were not even close to that. I mean, that one had some holes to fill. A lot of them, I guess, over the time. Somebody butchered on it for a little while too, so I don't know what's up with these Novas. People like to chop them up for some reason, but either way, it wasn't nearly as bad as this. And I didn't have a garage back then, and I did it in my driveway and a townhouse, so it's not unachievable, but at the same time you really need to set goals, because as I said, no one would buy a house on the grounds of, oh, it may take 5 to 9 years to rebuild it. That's my word for the day. I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this bad boy before it downpours on me.
Morning. Did they bring the paper
I couldn't for the life of me think of what I was going to use for a bedding compound. And this has been going on since like yesterday. I know a lot of people don't bother, but I come from a flooring world for like with ceramic. If you don't support the back of the piece of ceramic, eventually it's going to crack. Well, I wanted these brackets to sit on a perfectly flat, you know, surface. And, you know, I can get it pretty close with, you know, doing fiberglass and such, but this is not like it's going to show or something, so I'm not going to sit here and spend days and days and days and buff it out and all that good stuff. So I came up with the idea of, I've got lots of JB Weld sitting around. 5-minute epoxy. Just put some globs on there, pushed it in, worked it back and forth a few times. You know, just a tiny bit here and there, just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Just so that stuff will settle in. So it'll be at the highest point and it'll fill in the lowest points. And I'm going to let it sit up for another 5 or 10 minutes, probably give it 10, you know, just make sure it's nice and solid. Then we'll go ahead and we'll drill our holes and put our bolts in. And we'll see what we get from there. Some days it's like Walt Disney out here. Oh, we're missing this like rare rabbit.
Tea with chocolate biscuits. Are you spoon-fed boiled eggs?
Alright, they're installed. Both of them on both sides. Nice solid, sitting in a nice bedding. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Once the motor mounts finally sit down in their final resting position, that's when I'll drill these top holes out. Which will be a pain in the ass to clean up, but you know, I mean, I can't really drill the holes until I know where they go, so that's the only option I have on that situation. We're having a bit of a rain delay, and being that it's this late in the game, it may be a final. We did get our pickup in the bottom. I didn't expect to do that. As I said, I've been figuring rain was on its way all day. But we did get the pickup in the bottom, but nothing else after that. And it's sealed in and screwed in, so. But I think I have everything but one fitting down here in this box. So we are on the hunt for that one fitting also, if we do get the chance to go back into it. But right now we're going to do some cleaning up, and we'll probably start over again tomorrow. Oh, motor mounts came in. See you tomorrow. And welcome to another day. As you can see, we're a bit busy. It's pretty nasty out. Don't let the sunlight deceive you. It's been pretty nasty all day, to be honest. Everything's soaking wet, and it's late in the afternoon, so we won't be doing anything out there. So I made a trip to the Home Depot and a couple other smaller places. Bought up a bunch of crap, spending my kids' inheritances. It's just the way it works out, I guess. And in the process, as we said yesterday, our motor mounts came in. And on top of that, we got our new fan belt thing about the belt is, to put an alternator belt on this motor, you have to undo the water pump. So I decided that what other time would be better than now instead of in the boat to try to do this. And I got my alternator belt and I was trying to get it on, and it wasn't going on. I kept pushing them as hard as I could to get the alternator up against the block here. And there was this nub, this guy right here. I don't know what it's for. It's not even threaded, it's just through. The threading was actually in the block itself. So I just cut that thing off and sanded down my disc grinder over here and my disc sander. Put a couple coats of paint on it. It's all better now. No clue what that's for. It's not for a motor mount, I know that. Maybe it's for like a power steering pump or something, I don't know. But this boat will not be using power steering. But in the process of doing that, now the alternator goes all the way up against the block, which that's fine. And my new alternator belt here, if I can get it over here, fits with no problem at all. Now that I can get the alternator tighter up against the block, I can use the shorter fan belt that I just got, and it makes the alternator sit up just a little bit closer. The only thing I had to concern about that wasn't addressed so far was the hoses for the fill for the gas tank and such were laying right up against this. Now I could push them down or I could pull them up a little bit or something, I don't know. I figured something would work out. But if I can actually get this guy to go in just a little bit more, then why not? And while I was in the garage, it was the best time to do it because I would not want to start cutting on the block. It's taking a chunk like this big off in the boat because everything would have rust marks all over it from now until eternity. The plan right now is to get this guy put back together, and from there I'm gonna go ahead and probably work on the motor mounts that came in yesterday. See if we can get them all bolted up. Just kind of tie up these loose ends. I know, more loose ends. I should just call this whole series loose ends. But to me, that's pretty much what they are. If, you know, if things worked out differently, we'd be doing different things now. But since we have the time, why not? With that all back together and looking like it did when we started, except for the alternators just a little closer to the block. We were kind of glancing over our cache of things we got from Home Depot, and one thing kind of like hit me. I got this 1-inch brass piece. Thought it was a little shorter than this one, which it is, and it's for the reason is it's going to basically be making a 90-degree turn right there, so I wanted it as short as possible so it doesn't stick up as high. But in the process, I looked over and I saw this and I thought, oh geez, $14.50, something like that. I can't not buy a brand new check valve or ball valve, whatever you want to call it. When I got to the checkout, I realized this one cost $11. That cost $14.50. $11. I don't understand the world, but I'm just gonna keep on sliding through it until I reach the end, I guess. And like we were saying, our new motor mounts came in yesterday, and they are kind of choice, that's for sure. I mean, they're brand new, not used, so that's why they were a bit expensive. And they came with these, which is really neat. See how that's kind of cross-hatched or whatever they call that? So when you put that in there and you clamp it down, it's not going anywhere compared to these. And also, they're just a hair longer just by a hair. So I will be using these, and I'll be putting these back on the shelf, which probably where they came from in the first place, so it's no big deal. And we're going to install these guys next. But one thing I do want to know before I get started is just how high it is right now and how high it comes out in the end, because we won't change the motor height. But at the moment we're looking at just a little over, well, no, just a little under 13 inches to the bottom. So we'll see where it goes. We had to do some minor modifications on this one here because it holds the oil dipstick and tube. And we got this one in, of course. We just put our rods on the paws there because they're so loose, they just slide in and out, and wrong tilt, wrong way, and of course it'll fall out at the wrong time and probably damage something. So here's the million-dollar question. How tall are we? Just under 15 inches. So that was a good 2 inches. Perfect. But on this gloomy day, as the evening approaches, we're going to call it. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Welcome to another day. We don't need these where this is going. Got everything cleaned out. Lawnmower's out in the yard. Good place for it. I wish I could just send it on its way, but it's not automated. It's still the old style manual where you got to turn a wheel and, you know, that kind of stuff. So we won't be doing that. We also got our ball valve installed. I gotta say, I was a little nervous about it because we cut that, you know, that grate that goes in, it's all one piece, and the 1-inch pipe comes up through the hole here, and I didn't want it sticking up 4 inches, so I cut it off. And then it dawned on me, a lot of these pipes have narrowed ends, so they will actually thread up and all that good stuff. Every piece of pipe that I cut, it would not match up the threads. And I'm thinking to myself all night long last night, yeah, I'm probably going to have to replace that piece and end up with a 4-inch piece sticking out of there. It took a little finagling, and I'm glad I took the disc sander and I sanded it all around and kind of beveled it off up to like 2 threads up, just a little bit. It went on, and it went on about 5 or 6 turns to where it was super tight and covered up my PVC tape, I guess it is. So I know it's on, and it's on hard enough, and it's got PVC tape in it, and it's exactly where it's supposed to be. I call that a win in my world. I mean, a big win, because I really didn't want to have to take that whole piece back out after sealing it and screwing it in and everything else. So that's a simple thing, but it's a simple win, and we take them where we can get them in this world. So as I said, everything's been pulled out. A couple minor boxes just need to get pushed out of the way as we go, and this big boy is going in that boat for a second time. I will say that I have my fingers crossed that it's the final time, but I'm not going to swear to it, because every time you get kind of matter of fact about things, there's always something that can go wrong. I've tried. I had a full day yesterday of fixing everything up, from moving the alternator over to straightening out the fan belts and changing motor mounts, and then we spent a couple days rebuilding motor mounts. You know, we've had a week worth of work here just to make it a second attempt. So our fingers are crossed, but like I said, if it goes south, we'll just have to deal then.
Hey you, what you trying to do? You made the man, but that don't make you God. just a game to make you look so good, and you play the fool, you play the fool. You think you're cool, but you're not cool.
Alright, one last foot or paw to put in. I've gone ahead and put a bead of RTV around the bell housing itself before we put the rubber donut on. Then I put another bead down there around the transom shield where the two meet, and that way when this goes in there it'll squish in that, and then I'll put another one around the piece that goes around the outside, the donut, and along with that around the outside of where the donut meets the gasket. But so far so good. We're in, put our feet on. It means we're going for it. Hold on.
And what games did you decide to play? Better feed and watch the monkeys get your fix. You must.
Alright folks, we are in, that's for sure. It took a little bit to get the donut on. Once it got on and was tightened down, it's pretty much where it's going to be. And the easy way to tell is on the bell housing itself, which I guess the steering alarm's probably going to cover it up. And on the transom shield, there's two little knots right there. There's one and there's one right there. You get those guys lined up and you make it pretty uniform all the way around, meaning you can't have it like really gapped at the bottom and really tight at the top. And that's about the alignment for a Volvo Penta. It's just that simple. I love it. None of those, you know, gimbal bearings and it has to be lined up with a coupler, and if it's not, it'll shred the coupler on like a half-mile cruise. None of that. That's done. I mean, I can plug an outdrive into that and it's good no matter what. So I love Volvo Pentas. And the next thing I like to do when I'm putting in a motor in for the first time, so just basically give it a little bounce. Pick the weight up off the front with it already attached. Give the trailer a little bounce. Let it bounce around where it wants to actually, the transom shield wants it to sit so it's perfectly like lined up. And then just adjust my feet back and forth where I need to. As I said, I got them just a tiny bit weight. I mean, that's how close it is. You can't even pick it up, it's just enough to move it back and forth. Get my feet adjusted. Mark some marks and start drilling some holes. Get this thing locked down on the front half, and that's when the real fun begins. And we got to figure out all the wiring, we got to figure out the exhaust manifolds. I'm just hoping to God my risers aren't too tall. I got to put exhaust in the ass end of this thing. But this is pretty cool, and this is pretty cool. And I had, as I said, I had a little trouble with the transom shield, the donut going on the transom shield with just one bolt, and I seem to have gotten that straightened out. So besides that, our plan is coming together. But now, as I said, I need to get it shook around a little bit more. I mean, I was just shaking on this side. I like to do it in the middle, and make sure these posts are actually out the same distance. Then I'll just drop it down and start drilling.
And what games did you decide to play? Better feed and watch the monkeys get your fix. You must be bored, I know that you play the fool, you play the fool. You think you're cool, but you're not cool, you're just a fool.
This boat officially has a 454 big block in it, and you might as well say it's an original motor. Yeah, this 1972 has a 1995 original motor, so I don't know whether it's 95 or somewhere around there, 96, 97, somewhere. But it fits like mine, which is a bit tight, but easy enough to work with. Lucky enough on this one, you don't have what I have in mine, which is these little horseshoes that kind of come out and drop down from like here. So it's even a little more space in this one around the bottom section, which is really, it's all a plus. You got a lot of things to clean up. I already cleaned up a lot of things as we were rolling along here waiting for my air compressor to charge. Thank God for air tools. And that would have been a long day of driving that thing in and out, in and out, in and out. And this back one was giving me such a hard time that I had to use like a old boater's trick for fiberglass when putting screws in. If you got a real tight one, you put a little soap on it, so it'll use it as a lubricant to go in. Worked perfectly. Once or twice, just put a little Dawn liquid soap on it, just drove it right in. But that was 125 pounds on that air gun, so that motor is not coming out of there unless you told them lag bolts out, and that's a fact. I can tell you that now. You can flip this boat upside down, this motor will just hang inside of it. But that's about as far as I'm getting tonight. I'm going to put this thing away and call it an evening, and tomorrow we'll start the master list of everything else to do. See ya. Right, little lady? You got birdseed on your nose again. I just have it just always stays. We're gonna have to do this again. To put the alternator belt on this thing, you have to take off the power steering pump. See if something of this works. Alright, Skeeter, we're fighting her, but we're winning.
And we're back with air.